Today in the Nerdy Gritty, in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement, Wizards of the Coast has made changes to two of their major IPs.
One more world disappears inside it. Just another hopeless addict. Well, that makes a man instead. If the drums don't get you, the guitars will.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nerdy Gritty, where we delve deep into the details of pop culture. I am Planeswalker Fox.
And I am Dez, a cleric, a 10th level cleric.
A 10th?
No, wait, I got to tell you my backstory.
Yeah,
so,
please.
What do we have to
This is what our episode is.
And then this one campaign. Let me talk about it for a while.
Yeah, no, let's
Hold
go
on.
for it. Yeah, screw everything we just said.
Fox, this happens a lot. Obviously, we are people who have a good idea of the way that companies should go and move.
Yeah, like we know how everything should work.
Yeah.
And we're right all the time.
Always.
Yeah.
And so because of this, we are right yet again.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. In what way this time, though?
Oh, right. Of course. In what way this time? Not too long ago, I don't know how long it was ago, we talked about Splash Mountain in Disneyland.
Yeah.
And what a problem.
Curses.
Splash
This is one of
Mountain
my
is.
news things I was going to bring. It's all right. I got stuff. It's all right.
Well, one of the problem Splash Mountain is Splash Mountain has recently decided to change to Princess and the Frog.
Yeah.
I love this choice.
Yeah, it's a great choice.
This is awesome too. We talked about Moana. That was our big
We did,
thing.
yeah.
And I think Moana would have been a good choice. Would have been a good choice too. But this one is like, I think that Splash Mountain will translate to the swamps of the South, to Georgia or Louisiana or wherever it's set, much better than like a Hawaiian ocean. So I love this. This is super cool. To me, this makes sense in every way, shape, and form. I feel like Disney has openly and readily said, hey, sure, Song of the South is a problem. Let's stop celebrating that.
Right.
Number two, hey, we don't have that many black princesses. In fact, only one. So
Yeah.
let's give her a ride.
Sure.
Number three, hey, this ride is perfect for that. Like, it's exactly water and mountains.
Yeah, it
and
just
things
makes
like,
sense.
Yeah, it just makes sense in every way, shape, and form.
Hey, I'm literally just reading this now.
Oh,
Because you
okay.
took one of mine, so I'm actually looking up a different one, because actually one of my news stories I was going to talk about, not really relevant right now. Twitch banned DrDisrespect again.
Hey everyone, quick update on this upcoming story that we're about to talk about. Turns out DrDisrespect seems to have been banned permanently. The exact reasons haven't been discovered yet, and like we talk about, we're going to talk about this more in the future as a larger topic with Twitch. But just wanted to be clear, we didn't talk about as much as is available after recording. So yeah, all right, back to the podcast.
Oh, gosh. Okay. I have a similar one, but
I
not
find
about-
DrDisrespect very annoying,
Agreed.
so I'm okay with it. I don't even watch his stream, and I'm like, cool.
This is a topic that we're going to be talking about later about
We are.
policing Twitch streamers.
Yeah,
but
it's huge right now.
it's a real big issue.
Twitch and like Mixer died. Mixer
What
Mixer is
happened to Mixer?
in a grave.
Holy
in an
crap.
unmarked grave.
They were like, last I checked, they were doing
They had
fine.
I think they said we'll get Ninja and we'll be good, and then they weren't good, and now Ninja gets all the money from that and gets to go back to Twitch. Like,
it's outlandish to me.
anyway,
That Mixer was like, hey, let's just do Facebook.
yeah,
gaming.
let's just team up with
Let's
yeah.
just be
Hey,
Facebook.
Microsoft and Mixer is from Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good luck, guys. Like,
Yeah, that-
gaming scene, I feel as though they are just grasping onto straws in the gaming front. Anyway, we'll see with this new Halo thing that's happening. But they banned DrDisrespect again. It's his second time. He has 4 million followers. Let's see. It's his.
Did you say why?
Hold on. He has an exclusive arrangement with Twitch,
Right.
so he can't stream at all right
Right.
now. The reason is unclear, though.
Interesting.
Reach for comment. A Twitch representative did not specify what led to disciplinary action. Here they offered the following statement. As is our process, we take appropriate action when we have evidence that a streamer has acted in violation of our community guidelines or terms of service. These apply to all streamers regardless of status or prominence in the community.
BS. Lies. Lies.
That's incorrect. You're wrong
You
and
are-
you're
you
wrong
just
and bad.
lied.
So
It applies the same to everybody unless they make us a bunch of money. Then it applies less to them.
the I mean, this is all speculation, but all the other the high profile bannings happening right now are mostly related to
Harassment.
like sexual harassment and just terrible things like that. No evidence as far as the public is aware of this being the cause for him, but it's what's happening right now, so that's where people are kind of assuming, but also who knows.
There is a scene in The Office, in season 1 of The Office, or 2 of The Office, we're talking about office complaints to HR about people, and at one point he goes to like the complaints from Dwight about Jim.
Yeah.
And it's like this massive folder.
Right.
And then at the end, like it pans back and there's just like boxes and
Yeah, at the very end,
boxes of
he
things.
puts it on a shelf in the warehouse, and there's just hundreds of them.
I feel like this is the same situation as them saying, we have some complaints about Dr. Disrespect, and we've noticed that they go against our community standards. And again, it's just these like boxes that they've just been shelving away, but finally have to look at. Like,
This is our server farm that contains all the data of complaints against Dr. Disrespect.
well, on a less black and white notes as Dr. Disrespect. Have you heard the name Jenna Marbles before?
I have.
Yeah, huge streamer Jenna Marbles.
Yep.
Is quitting YouTube.
The streamer, she was a
forever.
YouTuber for a long time, and I guess
Yes.
streaming is the next step for a lot of people.
Yeah.
She's quitting. Yeah.
She's quitting altogether. And I thought, I read the article, and the reasons were pretty solid. Like, I understand what she's doing. So it turned out that in her, she's been doing this since like 2014 or something like that.
She's been on longer than that as far as being a YouTuber. A long
is it
time.
even longer than that?
A long
Yeah.
time, yeah.
And a decade ago, you know, comedy was different, and some things were more acceptable.
What was socially acceptable was different for sure.
Yes, for sure. And so she had a bunch of old videos,
Mm-hmm.
and people finally now were like, "Hey, this is a problem." And she said, "You know what, man? Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, those are problematic. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm making all those videos private. Nobody can ever see them again. And
Not deleting them, weirdly, but
I guess for herself, maybe posterity,
I guess.
but whatever it is, it's essentially the same thing. But then she said, and I'm done.
yeah.
I'm in a place right now where I don't want to put anything into the world that's going to be toxic or could be perceived as toxic, and I might as well just not. And again, this wasn't like a fine. I'll just not. I'm taking my ball and going home. The apology was genuinely like a, hey, this is a time when we really need good things in the world, and I feel like I've provided some of that, and that's also going to be available on YouTube. But I'm not going to make any more new content.
Right.
I'm done. And
Yeah.
she's not deleting her channel or anything. Again, all her old stuff will still be available, but she's making no more new content. And a lot of people openly said, hey, good for you. Anyway, what have you been up to, Fox?
I watched Watchmen. I am the answer to the question, who watches The Watchmen?
You watched
I watched The Watchmen.
Yeah.
They
how was
put
it?
HBO put all of Watchmen, their television show that is a sequel to the graphic novel, the
Right.
limited series, comic series, has nothing to do with the DC with Doomsday Clock, the DC sequel.
Right.
They put it all
D-sequel.
The D sequel is what you call it. They put it on the HBO website for free. You didn't even have to download anything. You basically just had to give them your email address. Anyway, so they put it on there for 3 days, starting on Juneteenth. And I crammed it all in 2 days. It's eight episodes, about an hour long each.
Wow.
Which I don't really binge a lot of TV.
Yeah.
Takes me a while, you know. I'll watch an episode a day, but I was like, I love Watchmen. I'm gonna finish this. So I did. I watched all 8 episodes of it, and it was very, very, very good.
Yeah.
I will say, no spoilers. I will say though that the ending was disappointing.
Is it a hard ending, or is it like setting up for a season 2?
Oh, there's like some teasers, but I think it's been pretty much established that there's not going to be a sequel.
Okay.
The showrunner stepped out, was just like, I'm good. I told the story I want to tell. And they've made no overtures about finding somebody new for a second sequel, for a
Okay.
second season. My problem with the show. So there's a heavy theme of racism and white nationalism, police brutality, and wearing masks, and like it's shockingly relevant to what's going on in modern culture right now, which is also probably why they put it up there. And the first, I would say 6 episodes, 6 or 7, are like very good about talking about these things. How there's a really great line that you even saw in the trailer that was like, hey, how do you tell the difference between a vigilante and a cop in a mask? And the person answering is like, I don't know, how do you? And she's like, I don't know either.
I'm watching Legend of Korra. I'm a little disappointed, but also still really into it. My little disappointment is, looks like season 2 and season 1 story are entirely separate. Obviously,
really?
Like, the characters grow still. It's a continuation, but there was a villain and an issue in season 1.
Okay.
Then they overcome it, and then season 2 begins.
Now
and
we've got a
new
new plot.
But it's a new plot instead of
Okay.
What I really liked about the first Avatar is the whole thing's one plot.
Let's start. We have a beginning, middle, and finish. And,
Right.
Yeah.
And they do it really, really well. But what I will say is this one is small propaganda, small spoilers. I'll get to that. Small spoilers for season 2 of Legend of Korra. There's a civil war between the northern and southern water tribes. And what's happening right now is there is this huge propaganda campaign. Now, what they've done is it's a propaganda campaign for what you are perceiving as the good guys in this, the Southern Water Tribe, where Korra is from, and all this other stuff. But the more that you watch it, the more that you're watching this, you're like, man, this is so wrong. Like, it's very clearly propaganda. I mean, even little things like they entirely misrepresent the Southern Water Tribe. They make them look like these heroic, people that are what's the like He-Man type of stuff, and against this ultimate villain or whatever else. And there's a clear good and evil and whatnot, no nuance to it. And then you suddenly realize, like, that's just kind of the real world, though. Like, there's so much propaganda in the real world today.
Yeah.
And
this person's going to solve all our problems.
And this person is ultimately evil no matter what.
Right. I watched a movie called The Vast of Night.
Okay.
This is a Amazon Prime, like, original movie. I'm going to spoil it.
Cool.
It's not great. So it's kind of just like, okay, that happened. It is a movie set in the 50s or 60s, maybe, about a very small town in New Mexico, and it's primarily about the local switchboard operator girl in high school and the radio DJ for, like, the late, 8 to 11 show or something like that.
Yeah.
Essentially, there's some weird noise. There's reports of something being seen in the sky. It's essentially a UFO kind of conspiracy thing where it's like we hear a weird noise there, and then you know how in the Goonies you got, like, this really fun cast of characters who, sure, there's this, like, adventure, and they go and find the treasure, One-Eyed Willie's treasure, and, like, it's like, yay, we win, and we got. But really what the victory is that they get the jewels and are able to pay and not have to leave Oregon.
Yeah.
And you have, like, the relationships between the characters that you really like and things like that. And so whatever actually happens in the plot, aside from, like, in the actual, like, let's go find One-Eyed Willie, whatever, who cares? It's really about, I feel I'm emotionally invested in these characters. This didn't do that.
On another note of, I'm not going to say disappointment, because this movie was fine. If you have family, you can watch it. The new Addams Family movie.
The animated.
The animated. Now, I was actually interested in this because of the talent that was behind it. Oscar Isaac, Charlize Theron.
Sure.
Not Haley Joel Osment. Dang it. The Chloe Grace Moretz.
Yeah.
Like, talented people are in this. One of the guys from Stranger Things, I can't remember his name.
Finn Wolfhard.
Yes, from Stranger Things.
From all 80s movies now.
Yeah. And I wanted it to be good. I went to it also because I love the Addams Family, the goth Des of the 90s loves the Addams Family
100%,
aesthetic. Yeah. And also one of my earliest crushes was Christina Ricci
yeah.
as Wednesday Addams.
Mhm.
You know, anyway, I wanted to love this. It's bland.
Yeah.
Super bland. And there was once upon a time that you could blame it on being a children's movie, but Pixar and a lot
Children's
of other
movies
things,
are quality
yeah,
most of the time
like,
now.
They can make them phenomenal.
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So good. Top-notch children's movies out there. This was so bland and so normal.
All right. Well, that's all I've got.
Yeah, that's all I got too. Hey, you ready to get down to that there nerdy gritty?
I think wait. Yes.
All right, let's go.
Before we get into that, let's talk about our Patreon. So if you've been listening on most of our platforms, if you listen on YouTube or if you listen on Spotify, if you listen on Stitcher or wherever you might be downloading this podcast from or streaming it, you're hearing what we call the regular version. I guess we don't actually.
I did. The
we
same
don't
thing
actually
last
have
time,
it. Yeah,
like,
I did
we
the same
called that,
thing.
and like we don't call it anything.
We don't call it anything.
And then you'd made.
We
the
call
same
it
mistake.
the nerdy gritty.
Yeah.
Now, if you like it, which you probably don't, so that's fair.
Sorry,
But
if you do like it,
if you do like it, we actually have what's called a director's cut. It is an extended version of the nerdy gritty in which we don't edit it at all. So what we do is edit out the first part. We cut off. We trim down. I'll say our first section where we talk about the things we like. That we played or watched or whatever. We talk about the news. We trim down those sections because we can go on forever on those. So we cut it down a little bit. Well, just to be clear, we do not edit at all the nerdy gritty portion after the jump, what you'll hear after this. So if you like hearing our reviews of stuff or want to hear more about the news that's going on, then go to our Patreon. If you become a $5 or $10 level patron, then you will gain access to the director's cut of every single episode of the nerdy gritty since we started doing a director's cut. So
Right.
a good long content. And I'm saying that's about 20 to 30 minutes extra of
Content
of
every single
show
time.
every time. So there's a lot there.
Even at the $1, you get access to all of our Patreon exclusive
right.
content.
We get lots of bonus content, early access, or even just bonus in general that you won't see anywhere else. We've got a lot of stuff on there for you. Go ahead and check it out. And of course, if you can't swing that right now, we understand. You're dead to us, but we also understand. We appreciate your support in any way, whether that's liking or sharing or telling your 10 closest friends about it. Because if you don't, then a weird horror monster will find you at night. It's like one of those old emails, those chain emails.
yeah.
We're doing that in audio form now. So yeah, we thank you so much for your support in whatever way you can give it to us.
That's patreon.com/dezandfox.
Right, that's good, important. Thank you.
Right, or you can just share the podcast with all your friends. We appreciate that.
Thanks, and let's get down to the nerdy gritty.
So obviously, with everything going on with Black Lives Matter and a lot of the brutality and a big search into the reality of racism in our nation today, a lot of organizations and companies have been taking a look at things that they have overlooked in the past.
Yes.
And making some changes. Really awesome things. Really, really good things have been going on. Among those people have been a lot of the more nerdy organizations, including Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
If you guys don't know what Wizards of the Coast is, they are a subsidiary of Hasbro. So Hasbro is the toy and game maker, board game maker. When it comes to super nerdy stuff for Hasbro, they pass that on to Wizards of the Coast. And so that's Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of other tabletop type games or card type games, things like that. Wizards of the Coast makes so many of these things.
They're huge.
Yeah,
And
they're
as far as
massive.
the role-playing, like tabletop role-playing realm goes, they are the big ones.
They are solely responsible for making D&D mainstream.
Right.
I give that to Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro.
100%.
Because before it was like the nerd thing.
That
Now
nerd
it's-
thing that your weird friend did or your uncle did who lives in a van.
Or that I did in college. But
Yeah, when you lived in a van.
yeah, that's true. But they have recently taken a look at some of the old Magic cards as well as some of the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons, and they've made some changes. Now, we want to talk about this for a couple of reasons. Number one, because we both have played a lot
of both.
Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons. But also because there are some thoughts that each of us have, and particularly I want to talk about with this. So let's kind of dig into it here, and let's get into the starts of what these changes actually were. Let's start with the Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, I think that's
because to me
the quicker one.
Yeah, more of my conversation wants to come from the D&D one.
Yeah. So Magic the Gathering, they have thousands and thousands of cards in their database, in their stable, basically, that you can use. They have a ban list every year of cards that make the kind of break the game or whatever. They have now perma-banned forever 7, I believe it is.
Yep,
1, 2, yep, 7.
Depictions.
Yeah, some. Okay, yeah, that some of them are more blatant than others, for sure.
Some are blatant. Other ones are like, I can see where you're going with it. And other
Yeah.
ones I'm like, what?
Really? Okay, well, yeah, all of them to a certain extent. So let's just, like, the biggest one, of course, is a card called Invoke Prejudice.
Yes.
Now, this one, we're going to talk a little bit about Magic the Gathering, like, gameplay, which I don't think we have to explain a lot of it, but basically, it if an opponent casts a summon spell that does not match the color of one of your creatures, one of the creatures under your control, that spell is countered. Essentially saying your card is not the right color, it's banned.
Right.
Now, that happens a lot in games, or in the cards. That's a standard mechanic.
Yeah, so
but
in Magic the Gathering, this is not a very
it's not,
direct
none of
thing at
these,
all.
yeah, well, except for one of them. Well, none of them, the actual, like, how the game plays, that's never really the problem.
Right.
It's a lot in the name of the card and the artwork for sure.
And the theme that it's trying to get
Yes,
at here.
this one is called Invoke Prejudice. It bans a certain color, and it also has a picture of these ghostly figures wearing pointed hoods and robes.
Now, they are all fully black robes, or at least they're silhouetted.
Yeah.
I take it more as silhouetted than anything.
Sure.
But, let's be blunt, they sure look like the Klan.
They sure look like the old Ku Klux Klan. And the other big note about this one is that the archive code, the number it has, is 1488, which is I don't want to talk about it. You can specifically look it up for yourself. That is a combination of two numbers that are very
white supremacist.
White supremacist. They are used for very specifically white supremacist ideals.
Right.
And so it basically is saying, or what they're saying, or what is clear is this was on purpose. Like, this was not some jag out there was like, wouldn't this be funny? Or or was saying, hey, white supremacy is the best. Let's do this.
Right.
And neither of them are funny or good. So that's a big one. The other ones are, like, the next one is, let's see, what is it? Crusade.
There's Cleanse.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know why I can't zoom in. Oh, here,
I've got Cleanse, which all
There's
black.
Cleanse, Imprison, Prattish Gypsies, Jihad, Crusade, and Stone Throwing Devils.
Yes.
So if we go over these one by one, you said Crusade. All white creatures gain +1/+1. Now,
again, not a problem mechanically, but
right, to me it's
called Crusade.
Yeah, this one, there's a lot of mixed emotions about this one, especially because there are a lot of mixed history about the Crusade, like how we understand it, what actually happened, which Crusade. There were like 6 of them.
There were lots of Crusades,
things like that. Like the Crusades themselves.
The last one was shockingly recent, actually.
Was it really?
Like 1988.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Sean Connery was in it. So Crusade, I get it. Like, to me, you have to look at it corporately also.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad choice.
Ban it. That's fair.
Yeah, sure, man, whatever. There are, I can tell you right now, there are like 4 or 5 other cards that do the exact same thing.
Exactly.
And
mechanically, you're not hurting. You're gonna find other +1/+1 to white creature cards.
I have a mono white EDH that really uses.
Do you have Crusade in there?
I don't.
Okay.
So, mostly because the ones that I chose give only my white creatures.
Yes.
+1/+1, not all white creatures.
Only the white creatures you like.
Right. Some of the blatant obvious ones are like Prattish Gypsies.
Yeah,
like
that's not an okay word.
Yeah, it's just kind of tough.
They're the Romani people.
Yep. The Jihad.
Jihad's a bad one.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
It's just, again, it's taking something from a culture and trying to make a mechanic out of it, which is just not a good idea.
There's Cleanse, which to me is another one of those. Yeah, I get it. It's called Cleanse, and it's all black creatures in play are destroyed. Just a poor combination of cleansing, as in ethnic cleansing,
right,
and black creatures specifically, not great.
Like, again, that mechanic is not a bad thing.
Yes.
There are plenty of all white creatures,
all
red
creatures destroy.
whatever.
You know,
right?
We got Wrath of God that destroys all creatures.
Right. But you can just call it something else entirely.
Give it another name,
like,
and it'd be fine.
yeah, like purge evil or whatever.
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
Erase. Which
Yeah.
is there's probably already
There
a
is
card called I'm
Erase.
sure
Yeah.
there is.
But another one, Imprison, is one that to me, if the artwork was not there, it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
If
But
it was
Imprison,
different artwork, yeah.
it's got like it locks down the creatures so it can't be used.
Yeah.
But the depiction is of a black slave.
Is that yeah?
It's essentially it's a black man who's chained up.
Yep.
It's very much a black slave. The one that I stop and I'm like, wait, what? Stone throwing devils.
Sure.
It's a 1/1 creature. The first strike. It says sometimes those with the most sin cast the first stones, and it's got some devils throwing stones.
Here's the problem. Like, it's hard to kind of tell what the picture is. To me, I think where they're going is it's kind of invoking a savage type like imagery.
There's a ton of that already.
I understand
all over.
of like but and I also think like devils, like as in like is like a pejorative term sometimes.
Yeah, that's
like a
but there are
stone
also
throwing
a ton of
devils.
Other devils, and like devils are a creature type in Magic
Sure,
Gathering.
I think the stone throwing is part of it. Like they're a savage.
That's
like,
what I looked
backward
up. Was
race.
like was calling somebody a stone thrower or a stone throwing devil some sort of
Might have been something
slur or
specific.
something, but I couldn't find
No.
anything. So
Yeah, this one
I
might have
don't
been
know why that one.
maybe somebody complained about it and they said, well, it's a super old card anyway. Who cares? Like,
And here's the bottom line: it sucks. Nobody's gonna use.
yeah,
that
it's not
card.
even a good card. It's a 1/1 with first strike. Well, for 1 black. So I mean, there's worse cards, but
Right,
who cares?
There are worse cards, but yeah, there are much better cards. So that one is like whatever. But
so those are the 7 that have been banned.
to me, more than anything, this shows that Wizards of the Coast is willing to take a look and say, "Hey, there's some problems.
Yep.
We're going to take care of that." And this is something that is so easy.
Yeah.
It's not at all difficult to say, "Hey, incite prejudice. It's got some KKK looking folks on the,
It's bad.
the art
It's
there.
banned.
That's bad. Let's not use that
We're
anymore."
done.
Yes, that's not a difficult thing to do at all. So I applaud them for this.
Sure.
This is something that I think is a great idea and goes really well.
So yeah, this one's a pretty clear like, yeah, good idea. Just don't do it. Pay more attention as you go on.
Right.
Some of them were kind of relevant, like recent, probably within like modern play. I think a couple of them were still legal. So yeah, makes sense. The other thing, the more interesting thing to me, and the
Yes,
more
very
I guess
much so.
debatable, possibly,
Very to me, very much so.
is what they're doing in Dungeons and Dragons. So we're smacking like the full meat of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It's been out for a couple of years now. They've got lots of books, and they've decided to make some fairly big changes, I guess.
Mostly in the lore
To
for
most
the big
yeah,
changes.
lore.
But there are minor changes, minor to big changes coming in mechanics as well.
Yeah, so I have up here, they put out Dungeons & Dragons on the Dungeons & Dragons website, an article, and this is by the Wizards of the Coast /D&D team.
Yep.
So it's just, hey, this is what it's called, Diversity in Dungeons & Dragons, which to me sounds like a podcast name of like a D&D podcast, but also,
Diversity in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, D&D.
And dives and drives.
and diners and drives. And I love it. I won't read this entire thing because it's not super long, but it'd take a long time for me to read here. Let me give you a few of what they're actually doing to improve. Here are some concrete things they're doing. We present orcs and drow in a new light in 2 of our most recent books. In those books, orcs and drow are just as morally and culturally complex as other peoples. We will continue that approach in future books. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
That's one of the big things that's happening lore wise.
And I'm split on that already.
So there's been a while for basically the history of D&D, certain playable races, if you are going to play that character, then you have to have a certain moral alignment.
Right.
A moral alignment. Your alignment in D&D basically tells you how it goes between good and evil and how come I can't remember the other side
Neutral.
of it? Right? Neutral, good, evil, neutral, and then
There's a
lawful and
chaotic.
Lawful and chaotic. It
It's
basically
ethical
tells
and
you
moral
how
on
your
two
character
sides.
is
Yeah.
going to react to situations and what its goals are going to be. And so there are certain races historically in D&D that you must be evil. If you're an orc, if you are a drow, which is essentially a dark elf, you must be evil. And they are changing that. They are changing it so that there are no races that are inherently evil, because they are claiming that it sends a poor message that
Right.
certain people groups are just always bad always. So I have no problem with this. I think it's smart. I'd love to hear what you're
So
thinking.
here's my issues with it, and here's my thoughts on it.
Sure.
Is they're not distinguishing. I think they could make a much better step, a much less complicated step, by just saying we are removing the word race from all of our books, and we are instead including the word species. And I think that would solve all of their problems without having to change things mechanically and lore wise, as well as just in the way but I guess the combination of lore and gameplay as you're actually in there. Because here's my thoughts with it. The drow elves, the dark elves, I understand, because that is a quote unquote race of elves.
Yeah.
And this is a different color race. By the way, they're dark skinned,
Which makes no sense because they live in the Underdark.
Right, they should be significantly
They should be
paler.
very, very pale.
Right, and same thing with the Sphere which are or not Sphere the Duragar. The Duragar are the bad dwarves, and they're gray skinned,
Yeah.
and they're evil.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's just lazy.
It really is. But in both of those, there is a race within a people group, and that race within the people group is evil. I don't like that. Step up and say dwarves are dwarves, and they can be anything. Elves are elves, and they can be anything. But when you step in and you say orcs can be anything, or kobolds or goblins can be anything, and in our lore they will be anything, now you're hitting on some issues within the actual gameplay of it. Because the purpose of a world like this, of a fantasy world, is that there is absolute good and evil, black and whites.
Now I think I disagree there significantly.
If you're a paladin and you're stepping into a room and your goal is, I am a lawful good paladin and I don't kill anybody who's bad, or I don't kill anybody who's good or who is not evil, you've significantly thrown a monkey wrench in the actual gameplay, both as a player and in the lore of you walk into a room filled with goblins. The way the game has worked forever is, as a player, you know immediately goblins are evil. We know this. This is just kind of the way
Sure,
the
that's
game
how
works.
it's worked.
And the ability to, like, even in Lord of the Rings or any sort of fantasy, Star Wars, there's good and there's evil, and there is a pretty stark difference between the two.
Sure, but in those things, the evil is always generally is based on their actions. The stormtroopers are considered bad because they are enemy soldiers for the Empire. Finn is good. He decides to stop being a soldier for the Empire. In Lord of the Rings, yes, the orcs are bad because they are they're killing innocent people and trying to kill you, like the Fellowship, and steal the ring for their master. Like it is based upon their actions, not necessarily because of
based upon the actions of their people. You don't know every orc. What if you were to come across a band of what are they, the big ones called?
The Uruk-hai?
The Uruks. A band of Uruks in their camp. You don't know what's going on. Would you think that Aragorn would want to stop and try to have a conversation with them? Or
Now
would
here's
you
the
expect
thing.
him to go and fighting.
That's the problem. Is that in fantasy, it's too often these are the bad people because of how they look. To say that, like, what the problem is that drow are evil because they look this way. Like, they are inherently evil, and what differentiates them from, as you're creating a character, is their how they look. And to say, like, because everybody can be any kind of, like, class, or
Right.
mostly use any kind of weapon or take different feats or whatever, like, you're generally not hamstrung by your your race as far as what you can do as a person. All it changes, I mean, you get certain bonuses because of your race, which is also problematic because I feel like
that's changing.
That talks about which is good because I think that talks about like black people can jump higher.
See, and this is
and
where,
so I think the physical differences, how people look, should not be dictating their morality as as sentient beings.
And this is the huge difference here is we're talking about fiction, and we're talking about a fictional world in which there are more than just humans. For you to say black people can jump higher, that is a racial stereotype.
That is in real life a stereotype.
But if I were to say that dogs can run faster than humans, that's a species, and it's not a stereotype. That's a fact.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Fact of species.
But here's the thing: a dog is not a sentient creature in the same way that a human is. Whereas a drow is a sentient creature in the same way that a human is. They are differentiated by their physicality, not in their ability to be good or bad.
Does their sentience change their genetics in any way, shape, or form? The fact that dogs are sentient or not sentient, does it change the fact if dogs all of a sudden became sentient, would they not be able to run faster than humans anymore?
No, but there's a difference in, like, we don't assign evil or good to non-sentient creatures. We assign them to sentient creatures.
My point is the sentience of a species does not change the fact that it's an entirely different species. And they call them races in this, and I've always thought that was a poor choice.
Race is a social construct that is inherent, meaningless, and was only created so that we could sell black people. So, like, it's a very poor choice of word to use. Agreed.
It's always been a poor thing. But I think the distinction of saying this is a different species, they are a different creature than humans. Genetically, elves can live 1,000 years. Humans can live for up to 100 in general. That's not a racist comment.
Sure.
That's a species
comment. But that has nothing to do with their morality.
So I was talking specifically at that point about the character bonuses that you get from them.
Sure.
Like D&D is saying now there are variants so that you can get different character bonuses depending on your race. If you want to be a more constitution heavy elf, you can change the character bonuses for your elf. And you could already kind of do that anyway. Like you could just roll yourself a higher constitution.
I think, hold on. I think at the base of all this, we have to recognize D&D has always been and always will be entirely player driven. You're always allowed to, and they say this in every single book, change anything that they say is the rule. You're encouraged to.
Yeah.
They have guidelines, and here's the base way to play that might be good for beginners. But if you want to change something, then do it. House rules are always a good thing and should be fine.
Absolutely.
So we have to recognize that at not the beginning. We've already been talking about this, but we have to recognize that, like, hey, all of this is there's an element of corporate speak here. We're doing this because it doesn't mean it's not good. It doesn't mean it's not like a smart, or it doesn't mean it's not coming from a place of genuine desire to change. But it's still a element of like we're doing this because we think we are kind of sending the wrong message.
I just came up with a metaphor that I think is kind of explains my frustration with it. Imagine it's a typical board game, Monopoly, Game of Life, whatever. You roll the dice and you move them out of spaces. But instead of moving spaces, up until this point, they've called it border jumping. You jump borders. You jump 8 borders when you roll, a 5 and a 3, whatever. And all of a sudden, that's definitely one that can be.
Sure, it can be. Yeah, maybe
instead of saying, you know what, we're going to start calling it move spaces. I feel like they've said we're taking the act of rolling and moving out of the game. Are we changing the way that mechanic works?
I can understand that maybe specifically with the character buffs, like the bonuses that you get because of your race. Like that makes sense to me. If you are shaped differently, if you are a stout dwarf with a heavier, you have a stronger constitution, that's a thing about your people.
Right.
But here's my problem comes with the morality thing. I'm okay with them I agree with you, I think, on the character, like the racial traits. As long as they are, I think even that I would need to look at details, but I think the morality of it, because I think the argument of, well, then how does a paladin work? Well, then he doesn't get to just walk into a camp of people who look a certain way and murder them and say they were evil. See, that's That's a problem. That's what people are doing today in real life. People are killing black people and saying, well, they looked like they had a gun, so I killed them. And like, I think that's directly what they're trying to address. As even aside from real life analogs, that's super boring. Like, a paladin should be on the side of good, and somebody indiscriminately murdering an entire race of people should never be able to say they are doing what is good. Like, that is a problem. Because even Drizzt is a drow, and he's a good person. Like, he does good things. And so they have to admit that, well, wait, we're breaking our own rule here, because people are not always, they are not who they are because of their skin color or because of how they look. It's about, you know, how they were raised. You know, like, it takes away a lot of the nuance that I think good storytelling can have to say, well, you look like a goblin, so therefore you're an evil person, and I get bonus points when I kill you. Essentially, I get a bonus to my damage because you are a certain race. That's just boring to me.
Whether or not it's boring to you, that might be exactly what some people are looking for, though. And you're drawing an analog from one thing to another that doesn't necessarily, like, I can see where you get from a paladin walks in and sees a group of goblins and knows that goblins are evil and kills them all. There are, I'll say it takes a lot of steps to get to a white man is comfortable with killing all the black men because black people are evil. Like, there is an amount of fiction that is involved in that. I don't feel like there is an analog between goblins and any sort of thing on Earth. I don't feel like there's an analog between orcs and anything that is on Earth. To try and draw an analog and say, well, if you're going to say that orcs are bad always and that we can kill them freely, why don't we say that black people are bad and we can kill them freely?
No,
to me, that's a racist comment in itself. Like trying to draw an analog from black people to orcs orcs are fictional. They don't exist.
No, okay, just because it's fictional doesn't mean you can't doesn't mean you can't draw parallels between real life, like, people and like no, there are clearly defined, like, we just talked about these magic cards that, like, just because Invoke Prejudice has a picture of people in robes and pointed hoods doesn't mean they look like the KKK. Like, there's a clear, like, what is happening, the race of drow are physically different in these specific ways. Darker skin, and pretty much entirely. Yeah, they have light hair.
The drow and the Duergar, the dark-skinned race within a species makes perfect sense to me. But I'm saying goblins, kobolds, orcs, devils, demons, these things that we have established as evil creatures in lore
that
forever,
have been established by the lore of D&D.
Right. Well,
right.
Okay, that have been established in lore forever as evil things. I don't feel like there is an analog that can be taken with them. And you say by actions, like we can judge people by actions.
Right.
The reason why it was okay in Lord of the Rings is because by actions they've always done that. That's the way it's been in the lore of D&D forever. In the lore of D&D forever.
Sure, I understand. Exactly. And now they are saying, hey, we're changing that to make it so that there is not, because you can play as a goblin. They have created rules to play as certain races that were considered to be evil.
I mean, not in 5th edition, but yeah.
Some. In later books they have, and whatever. They have created those in early editions, which are still, they still exist. Yeah. But they're, and they're saying, hey, that's not true anymore. Like, they're opening up the rules to say that goblins, a sentient race with speech and reasoning capability that you can communicate with and can understand, like, basic they can understand all, like, to say that all of them are evil is a racist concept because they look different from somebody else, but they look a certain way. To base the morality of a certain race that is race because they look a certain way. Race is a term that was created purely based on physical attributes of humans. So if we're using that term, then we have to go by what the human term is. And that means it's separated because they look a certain way.
And that's why, again, I think the word race is the problem, not the mechanic. I think the term species is what we should be used to.
I think that would still be problematic. It has a
everybody can agree that cats are evil and dogs are good inherently. They're just born that way.
sure,
There are all good boys and
Yes.
evil kitties.
But
That's
none
just
of-
the way it works.
okay.
But in reality, what I'm saying here, joking aside, is that the way that the game plays for a lot of people, I would even say for the majority of the people, there is an inherent concern with the moral function of a group. If at any point you say, okay, we are bringing into the lore that characters should be treated as neutral no matter what always, it's going to change the basic mechanics of the game. And again, they can do whatever they want.
Well,
They
here's
really
the
can do
thing.
whatever
We don't
they
need to
want.
treat everybody as neutral. The DM still gets to decide. So if a paladin who gets buffs because he's fighting evil characters or creatures, they walk into a slaver camp and the DM's like, yeah, you get your bonus here. These are slavers. But you just walk into a city in the Underdark. Now it can be a situation of, like, you don't get your bonus here. They're attacking you, not necessarily because you're evil. They're evil, but because you represent a threat to them. That you are armed and walking in. Like, I think it just opens up the opportunity for DMs to be more specific about who they are fighting and what makes them evil.
So
Because
what
to
if-
say because they have dark skin, they're a drow, they're evil, is an inherently racist thing.
For drow, sure.
Right.
And again, even then, elves don't exist, but the drow are a race of elves.
Well, if we're
So
talking about that,
makes
if it
sense.
doesn't exist in real
But-
life, then it doesn't matter. Then we can't make any comparison to Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or anything. None of that exists.
But my point being that for entirely different species, like you say, what makes them that way? What if it's that the magic of the land and their god has, what if whoever the god of the goblins is or of the orcs is inherently establishes that they are evil creatures always?
See, I think that disregards that disregards the definition of evil. Evil is not a character trait. Evil is intent.
That is the base mechanic of the games. Evil is a character trait.
Okay,
In the base
cool.
mechanic of the
Then
game.
change it and make it better.
But
And that's what I think they're doing here.
so my point is, at that point, you're changing the core base mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons.
Good. Make it less racist. That's
Not,
they
it's
change.
not a race.
Yes, it is. By how the game has defined characters, it is.
I, as a Mexican man, have never ever in my life felt issue with the way that they deal with orcs or goblins in Dungeons and Dragons.
Cool.
I've never met another. I was taught this by a black man, by Dungeons and Dragons, by a black man who. There's never ever been any sort of issue with that in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Then it's to me, this is an example of inherent bias. This is how I've always known it, therefore it's fine. But maybe we get a chance here to look at how morality and race intermix in this very popular gaming system, and maybe we get to change how it works so that it's not sending a message of, if you have dark skin, if you are a certain race, then you are evil.
I'm saying that we're coming to a point where you are going to get away from what Dungeons and Dragons was like its core. And again, they can do that. It's fine.
Yeah,
can
they
do
get
whatever
to.
they want with it. It's fine. But I think that they are going farther than they need to when they could just say, we're removing the word race and putting in the word species. I think that would solve all the problems.
I don't think so. I think it's just going to substitute a one word for the other, which is like, it's still basically judging, it's still deciding that a certain group of people is evil based on how they look. And I think that's the problem. Sure, race is a poor word to choose because it's just a weird concept in real life anyway, but it's still the base problem of, like, you are evil because you look this certain way. That's a problem no matter what you call the actual thing.
But nobody's saying you're evil because you look a certain way. They're saying you're evil because you're of that species, and we happen to know that species This is a trait of that species.
That's circular logic, though. You're evil because you're a drow, and we know you're evil, and you're a drow, so that makes you evil.
But evil is a, like, you are or are not. There, in the real world, there is no black and white. There is gray
Right.
area and whatnot. In Dungeons and Dragons, there isn't. There is a
No,
point where you switch.
have you ever played
There is a
Dungeons and
point
Dragons?
where you switch from evil to neutral, or a place that you switch from neutral to good. As a cleric or as a paladin, you will lose your powers if at some point the dungeon master decides what you have done steps out of the realm of good and into the realm of evil, or vice versa, or whatever else. Like there
Right,
are,
and that's to encourage role playing.
Right.
You've decided you're this certain person, like, and we're asking you, like, play that certain person. If you stray away from that, you're no longer playing your role. You're starting to play Dungeons and Dragons.
My point is that in the inherent mechanics of the game, there is absolutely a good and an evil and a neutral, and there is a point in which you are not one and become the other. And
If you choose to.
right, but as far as NPCs go and things like that, and that it has never been a judgment of a skin color or something to that nature. It's always just been a judgment on
The
species.
race.
Again, race
It
in
is.
game
Because this race looks a certain way. Like,
acts a certain way.
they are a part of their no. That's not how the game works. It doesn't matter what I don't have to play Dungeons and Dragons as my drow character to be evil. I have to create a drow character to be
as a player,
evil.
you can do whatever you want in the game. That's the point of the game.
Well, sure. What I'm saying is that this game inherently decides that certain races are evil. You don't have to start. If I created Bing Bong, the drow, he's evil already. Because because they are that is an evil race.
But you as a player can make a good one if you want.
Right, if I choose to.
Yeah.
Right. And so what they're saying is you can do whatever you want. They've always said that. What they're doing is changing the core mechanics of the game to send less of a message that says these races are evil and these races are good.
And
Or not evil.
I understand what they're doing. I'm saying I think it's a pointless endeavor. One that I think the message they're trying to send is not one that with they're going too far with it. I think the simple things, like I said, like the drow and the Duragar, the dark colored race in these species, yeah, for sure, I understand that wholeheartedly. But I literally don't know a single person in my decade or more of Dungeons & Dragons that has ever thought, man, orcs and goblins get a bad rap, huh? Like they are judged too quickly or anything like that, because this has just been the mechanics of the game forever. It's literally a part both as a player and in the lore and in the rules of how the game functionally works.
Sure.
And I feel like they're changing the game more than needs to be changed for, again, reasons I don't fully understand. Like I feel like I don't get it. I get some of it, but I feel like they're taking steps way beyond. Again, going back to my first metaphor of, it's like saying you don't move in this board game anymore because we called it border jumping, instead of saying, hey, we're going to change the way this is worded and the way that we refer to it.
Okay. I understand that point.
Yeah.
I what I think they're trying to do is simply change the underlying messaging of, because you look a certain way, you are evil.
And I get that.
Because there are people in real life who are told that.
Yes.
And if they want to continue introducing
I've been told that.
Yes, and
Yeah.
if they want to continue introducing D&D to new generations, especially ones that are being raised now in a world that is much more paying much more attention to skin color and inherent bias, then maybe they need to change their messaging as well.
Yeah. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think we wholly agree on what they want to do and what their goal is.
Sure.
I think the extent that they need
they're
to
taking
go,
it to a little, yeah.
Yeah, the extent that they need to go to complete that goal.
I do recognize the difference between a goblin and a drow in the game.
Yes.
A goblin, well, no, actually, I don't. Goblins are sentient creatures too. Just because they've always been evil doesn't mean, like, goblins are, never good in anything, I think that's the problem.
And I think that the inherent problem that we're going to have in this debate altogether is that there is nothing that has sentience other than humans right now. And so
As far as we know.
And so you're basing this on like, hey, sentience is what gives you moral choice. If you have sentience, you have moral choice. Where I would say is not in that game. In that game, that's different. And so, but I have nothing to base that on. Like, I am literally creating this from nothing.
Sure.
You actually have this solid base of human sentience gives us choice. So sentience itself is something
that's really the crux of it all.
yeah, it really, really is
Yeah.
on what we're willing to
Sure.
attribute and whatnot. So yeah, that makes sense. Well, let us know what you guys think, actually. Let us know what you think about the changes Wizards of the Coast are making to Magic the Gathering, or more to our point for most of this conversation, the changes that they're making to Dungeons and Dragons. Let us know what you think about Fox's opinion on it and mine, Dez's opinion on it. More than anything, though, thank you so much, you guys, for your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Granger for the use of our theme song, All My Friends Have Wi-Fi, and some of my neighbors do too, off of the album Dear Sam.
And go check out our YouTube channel. You might be watching or listening to this on there. We got a lot of video games up there. We're playing Last of Us Part 2 right now. I'm very excited to start playing more after we're done recording this, so I'm talking really fast. We've also got Days Gone up there. I'm going to be putting up a bunch of demos I played from the Steam Game Fest. And I've got a lot of stuff in the works right now to put up there too. I've been kind of slacking lately. But
Code Vein is going back
yeah,
up.
we've got thousands of videos. There's something for you no matter what kind of video game you like.
I'll be putting up a new indie game called Evans Remains.
There you
that
go.
I'm excited about.
Well,
So,
we've got a lot, so there's something for you there. Go check it out.
thanks again, you guys, and always remember that save games, save lives.
See you next week.
My voice sings